What is going on, my dudes? This is Artist Shred, and I figured I'd make an update video for LUI since there have been a lot of changes lately. I'm going to actually be going over everything since around update 6.6.0. A lot of this stuff is live already, but I figured I'd go over all of it since there have been so many changes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over the changes, so we're pretty much going to jump right into it here in a minute, and then at the end, if you feel like sticking around, I will probably talk a little bit about like the add-on development and my plans going forward and things like that. One other side note is I am using dark UI, so that is why some of the UI elements may look different than what you're used to. Alright, so we're going to jump right into the changes here. Starting out with one of the biggest fixes. The bar highlight tracking works again. This is thanks to Dak Daniels. I couldn't figure this one out myself, and I was getting really frustrated by it back in the day. So Dak fixing this was a pretty big part of my inspiration for starting to work on the add-on again. So there's a couple other changes that have been made with the bar highlight tracking. There were some issues with staff tracking. If you didn't have like two of the same types of Destro staffs equipped, there was an issue with back bar tracking. That's been fixed now. So tracking for Crystallized Shield has been fixed and updated. It shows the stat count now here. One thing to note is there's not actually any information provided by the API on the stat count. This is just like fake tracking I'm doing myself. So for other wardens, you won't see this information, like you won't see the stat count for their shield, but I can make it work for the player, so might as well. It provides a lot better feedback. Trap Beast is working again. They changed some stuff on the API end, and it wasn't showing an aura, and I had to make a workaround for that. So you'll see the mine stat count again, and now if it goes off, boom, it will track the minor force buff. The tracking for Grim Focus works again. It'll show the stacks properly and the proc sound plays. This also goes for bound armaments as well, that's been updated. And I added stack tracking for Blood Frenzy and its morphs too, so you'll be able to see that stack up. Also, I'm not going to switch to a Dragon Knight to show it, but with Flame Lash, if you have a off-balance enemy targeted and it turns into Power Lash, it will have a glow effect kind of similar to the one on Shadow Image Teleport here, so it's an indicator that you should smash the shit out of that button, dude. I've also fixed the tracking for Scorch and its morphs, and I've added like kind of a new, what I just would, I guess, call echo tracking, and this is for Scorch and Haunting Curse. And basically what it'll do is it'll show, like, the first charge of this will show as 2 stacks on both your bar highlight and buffs and debuffs, and then the second stack will show as, like, the remaining 1 stack. So it makes it a little bit easier to track, like, where you are in your rotation with these abilities. There's been a couple menu changes as well. So previously, the back bar tracking here, you had to have highlight active effects on. I went ahead and just decoupled that, so if you want to show the back bar just to see it without the tracking on, you can do that now. There was also an issue where the ultimate label, this wasn't showing up if you didn't have bar highlight tracking on, so that's been fixed now. So there's been 1 fix and 1 addition for the cast bar. So there was an issue where if you were to teleport to a way shrine in a different zone, the recall cast would break almost immediately. And the reason for it is kind of goofy. So the API doesn't give us any like way to tell when a player breaks a cast. So with recall, the only thing I can check for is things like, oh, the player blocked, which will break the cast, or the player moved and their coordinates changed. And for whatever reason, if you zoom out to the world map and then go to different zones, your coordinates change. I don't know why, but I made a little workaround for that, so now the cast for that works properly again. As for the addition, I've added an option to display, and it's under the cast bar options here, to display the cast for heavy attacks. And this works pretty much perfectly. It'll show your heavy attack. If you drop it early, it'll interrupt. I didn't know this was possible. A user posted on the ESO UI comments that there's actually a way to stop or to detect when the player releases a heavy attack early. So now heavy attack casts are a thing. That is disabled by default. You do have to turn it on if you want to use it. So DAC added a option to add floating markers over the heads of enemies that you're in combat with, which is pretty cool. There's another submenu in here. You can just toggle it on like that. And I'll go ahead and show off how that works. So anything that you are in combat with will have a marker over its head. And you can customize the size of that too in the menu. The crowd control tracker has been updated with the ability to track snares and immobilize effects now. You can come down to the menu options and enable those here. This was implemented by A. Costanza. I'll show you how the snares work here. So it'll show just like a stun or another CC. And then for immobilizes, I need to go find a mob that immobilizes. Okay, here's our immobilization mob here. Now one thing to note is the API for combat events doesn't actually give us a way to differentiate between snares and immobilization effects. From what I understand, immobilizes are basically just snares that reduce the player's speed to 0%. So there's no way to tell with the combat events. The only way we could do it is by using like a manual override for individual abilities, which would require going through them manually to flag them. Or what we're using right now is there are the active combat tips that you get, like, that tell you to block an ability or dodge an ability, and there's one where you're immobilized that tells you to roll dodge. So that is how the immobilizes are implemented. It's not perfect, but it works pretty well. So it'll ping periodically to let you know that you are rooted. In the future, I might consider using manual tracking for immobilize effects, but it would require a lot of manual entry and a lot of time, so it's one of those things that's like very maybe. Alright, back to Stars Mackay for some buffs and debuffs changes. So if you aren't aware, LUI adds custom tooltips for a lot of buffs and debuffs. The majority of buffs and debuffs in the game don't actually have any kind of tooltip. So this was an always on feature before, but I just added a menu option to toggle it on and off. It is off by default. The reason for this is because these tooltips are all manual entry, and anytime ZOS changes like a player ability, I have to go through and make sure the tooltip's still accurate. And I haven't had a chance to do that for since I haven't been working on the add-on, I haven't done that for a good two or 3 years or something, so. I did go through major and minor debuffs, and potions and things like that should all be accurate still. But there's a lot of things that are probably now out of date. So if you want to turn the option on, you can. If not, you can leave it off. It does improve the syntax on a lot of tooltips as well. But yeah, I'll kind of show you how it works. So for example, with Vigor here, it shows you that it heals every X seconds for the duration. And Brawler shows that you're absorbing damage. I don't know if I'll have the time to go through all the abilities again and fix the tooltips and stuff. I'd like to, in theory, but that's a massive time commitment, so we'll see what happens. The option's there if you want to turn it on. Now, the other thing that's been added is for the buffs and debuffs frame, if you disable the hard lock here, Then the buffs will go across your screen like this, and before this used to they would just go clear across your screen. But now you have the option to configure how they stack. So it is under the alignment and sorting options, and it's this menu here for player target unanchored frames only. So you have control over each frame, over the player buffs and debuffs, and the target buffs and debuffs. And you can change the width. So for example, if I want to change here, let's just go with player buffs. I can change this to 100. And you can change the stack direction in there as well, so you can change whether the next row will stack up or down. And now, the containers will stack up or down, depending on how. And you can also, the alignment options also apply to this as well, the alignment options that are up here. So, now you have the ability to have, like, containers, basically, for the buffs and debuffs, like grid containers. The last sort of buffs and debuffs type change I want to show off is the Alliance War bonuses here. So the tooltips for these, LUI cleans the tooltips for these up a little bit, and they changed Emperorship Alliance bonus at some point, and the default tooltip for this is a little bit goofy, so this actually fixes that. Alright, so the next changes I'm going to go over are for chat announcements. And I'm just going to pull up the log of changes for this. I think it'll just be a little bit easier to go over them and talk about them that way. So the first is display announcements, which is a UI event that's used for a lot of different things. Arena stages, the progression between stages in Endless Archive, respec notifications, the entering group area notifications in Craglorn. If you're in Imperial City, when you go to different like subsections of the Imperial sewers, there'll be like the announcement that shows you the name of the boss and like a description of that area you're in. Those are all display announcements. So there's some options now to filter some of those on or off if you want. Not everything's implemented. I'd have to find where all of them are in the game to do that. But there's options for like Imperial City, Dragonstar Arena, Maelstrom Arena, and Endless Archive, for example. So you can toggle on/off the chat announcements, the display announcements, the center screen announcements, and the alerts for those. I've added the Archival Fortunes currency that's earned in Endless Archive, so you'll be able to see when you make purchases with that currency. DAC implemented support, so they added filleting fish at the crafting station at some point, and that wasn't showing up right, and DAC fixed that, so now it'll show like the amount of fish you use and what you receive from the filleting at the crafting station. There's also been a fix for mailing another player gold, so there's something goofy that happens with the API. If you send over half of the gold that's in your bag to another player, then for some reason the API value for the attached gold in your mail, that API event like fires again, and it shows, and it returns the amount of gold remaining in your bag instead of the amount you sent. I don't know why. It only happens when you send over half of your gold. So I had to make a weird workaround for that. So now when you mail another player gold, it shouldn't matter how much it is, it should show the correct value. There's been some error prevention implemented just for a couple different like item chat messages that could possibly throw an error here and there. Just some of those like odd things that are really hard to track down. I've also fixed issues related to where LUI broke some of the functionality of Lazy Writ Crafter. Writ Crafter had an ability, the ability to auto-abandon quests if they required like a certain material you didn't want to use. And now that works again. LUI was breaking that before. Also, Writ Crafter has an option to hide the center screen announcements for Writ-based quests, and LUI will now like pick up on that. So If you have the setting in RIT Crafter to hide the center screen announcements for RITs, that will work. Or if you just have LUI set to not show center screen announcements for Quest, if you just have it like down here in your log, then that will, then they'll just hide all the center screen announcements as expected. So there's also an option to hide the display of loot when loot log is active. If you have that add-on and you don't want LUI to show when you receive loot, but you still want like the currency and other things active, then you can enable this option and it'll just stop the LUI loot announcements. And then also there was an issue where chat announcements for collectibles weren't working right, so that's been fixed. Next change is actually to the info panel, and it's pretty basic. So there is now an option on the clock here to change the formatting, and it uses the same formatting as the timestamps. So you can change this to like a 12-hour clock now if you want. The default is going to be the standard setting that it was at before, which was the 24-hour format. Okay, so the last couple changes are for unit frames, and the first one here is that when a unit is invulnerable now, there is an overlay that shows they're invulnerable. Now for guards, the text here shows they're invulnerable. For bosses though, if like a boss goes immune to damage, you'll see this overlay and the color will change, but their HP percent will still show. There's no reason to obfuscate that. So this has been something that probably should have been implemented a long time ago, but now it is finally here. So the other change is now the unit frames will show the trauma effect, which that's the healing absorption effect, and I put Soldier of Anguish on to demonstrate this. So when the trauma effect gets applied, it will show that part of the HP bar discolored. By default, it won't show the numeric value. You'll have to go in there and change the formatting here. And then you'll be able to see the trauma value on there, so minus 4830. Alright, so that is it for the changes. I hope you guys enjoy the update here. Now, I figure I will talk a little bit about what's going on with LUI, and like, am I back, am I not back, what am I doing, kind of thing. So, first, I want to say thanks to everyone that's been helping maintain the add-on over the last couple years. Sanic has been doing all the updates over the past few years while I've been gone. Thank you very much for keeping everything alive, dude. I appreciate it. And there's been a lot of community contributions as well. You know, some noteworthy ones being like A Costanza adding a couple elements here and there recently, and then Dak has joined the team. Dak Daniels has joined the team, and he's been doing all kinds of optimization and fixes and stuff over the last couple weeks here with me. So we've been plugging away pretty good this last couple weeks here. So now, as for me, as far as how much time I plan on investing in the future in LUI, I will be honest, I don't really have very much interest in ESO right now. I'm not actively playing. I don't really plan on coming back to the game right now. I'm not super interested. However, this has been, like, it's been something to do. And it's also been, pretty fun too. So I'm not gonna say like, oh, it's been stressful or something. There's definitely been some stress with it, but I've been for the most part enjoying working on the add-on again. However, I do have a lot of stuff going on IRL right now. My financial situation is very no bueno, so I definitely have some other priorities, and I don't know how much time I'll really be interested / able to spend on the add-on in the future. But what I will say is, at least for the time being, I'm around, and I'll be trying to at least fix things if issues crop up, and I'll be around a little more, trying to keep an eye on GitHub and ESO UI. So as far as any major future development goes, though, that I'm not so sure on. So. And I'm not I'm not sure exactly what Dak's plans are for the future either. I don't know how much time he has or what he wants to do. So that being said, if there's anyone out there that wants to make contributions or help maintain the add-on, feel free to contact me. You can hit me at my email, artistshred@artistshred.net, or you can post on ESO UI, message me on there. You can post on GitHub. And the Git is always open to like pull requests. If you have something you want to change or something you see that you can fix, go for it. There's been a lot of community contributions to the add-on over the last couple years, and some pretty cool shit. So always welcome any contributions and suggestions as well. So on GitHub, you can actually come into, if you go into the Issues tab here, you can submit feature requests here. And I also opened up discussions, so we have like pretty much like a little LUI form here now. So anyone is welcome to post any kind of comments on there. And then of course the ESO UI thread as well for the add-on. So that's about all I've got. I want to say thanks again to Sanic for maintaining the add-on over the last couple years while I've been gone. And thanks to anyone in the community that's made contributions as well. I really appreciate you guys. It's been nice to see how well everything has been maintained since I've been gone. And that is it for me. Hope you guys enjoy the update. Take it easy.